Okay, is that any better? Yeah. Okay, okay. I'm in a Gaelic choir, but it's not going to learn that voice. I'd be glad to hear. Okay, welcome this evening. Thank you all for showing up. The room is half full with about a quarter of an hour to go, and it's filled at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a few more coming through the door in the next little while. Well, I'm hoping for a lively, informed, and passionate discussion this evening. Any debating of different views will be warmly welcomed, and I'm looking forward to it myself. I am personally, as you might expect, I'm undecided at the moment, so I'm hoping to gain something from this as well as I hope a lot of you will. Okay. We have two main speakers this evening. We have on second to my left is Angus Brennan McNeill. Angus is the SNP MP for Yell and Shear for Western Isles. Angus is a crofter, he lives in Barra. He has 3 daughters, he's been a primary teacher, and he's also worked for the BBC. We also have, to my left, is Leslie Riddick. Leslie is a journalist, a writer, and a broadcaster. Leslie this evening will be talking about independence and how it has affected the Nordic countries, and what the benefit has been to them. I know one of you, or one or two of you in the audience. My name is Pat Kieran. I'm an engineer, a surfer, a father of 4, and a supporter of independent thought and honesty. I think that's one of the reasons why I've been asked to share this debate. So, a couple of housekeeping points before we start. If possible, unless you've got a very important call waiting for you, you can either turn your phone off altogether, or at least put it onto silent. That'd be smashing, just out of respect for everybody in the room. There isn't a fire alarm planned, apparently. A fire alarm exercise planned. The staff, if there is an alarm, the staff will come through and explain, because it's probably just a smoke alarm in the kitchen going off for a steak burning or something like that. But if they don't come through, if they've all got suffocated in the kitchen, then the fire alarm is that direction, and the fire exits in that direction. Okay. I'd like to first invite Angus to speak for us this evening.
Okay, thank you, Matt. I'll maybe stand because I used to be able to only speak when I was sitting down, but when I was in comments for a while, you find yourself unable to stand unless you're on your hind legs, able to speak unless you're on your hind legs. I noticed Pat said he was in the Gaelic choir there, but he doesn't speak very loudly or sing very loudly. I can't get, although I can speak Gaelic, I can't get into a Gaelic choir for another reason, unfortunately. I'm the type of singer that puts a harmony to harmony. A high note, a low note, and a random note in between. So if things seem to go on quite late tonight, somebody will ask me to sing a song, and everybody usually moves for the exit. So I can clear rooms quite quickly. The other thing I would say, of course, is something that makes me feel at home. When I'm back in Barra, for 4 people gathered together, there's usually a raffle on the go. So I saw there's a raffle at the door here tonight. So I'm looking for tickets 476-485 with the hat blue. These are the ones that are hopefully going to be winning tickets. I hope the prize is good as well. It's a great pleasure to be in Caithness. And I was driving around today between here and Thurso with land envy. I can see just how good and how fertile the land is in this part of the world, and you can see why people would have settled here long ago from many places. And you can see why the citizens of Bergen and Stavanger perhaps decided a boat to the west over the sea was the place to go for them and come over here. I'll be speaking mainly about independence based on the white paper, the SNP's white paper for independence, hopefully based mainly on that. There are of course other visions. There's a pretty good vision over to my left here, Blossom, Leslie Riddick's book. I'm not sure it's exactly about independence, but it's about a different view for Scotland. And I think it's a valid view. It's a competing view. If you vote yes in 2014, you can vote Green in 2016, you can vote Conservative in 2016, you can vote Labour in 2016, you can vote SNP in 2016, and if they still exist, you can vote Liberal in 2016. The choice is indeed yours. You know it's time in what you do in 2014. You are quite free. We're at an exciting time in Scotland. Now, I speak in London to diplomats and to politicians from other countries, namely Norway, Iceland and Ireland quite a lot, Latvia as well, Slovenia also sometimes. There's been envy, particularly amongst those who became independent early last century or the middle of last century, that we're the generation in Scotland will have this historic opportunity for our country. And I think there's also further envy in the nature of the debate. The debate, whether it's yes or no, will be good-natured. It will also, on the 19th of September, whether it's yes or no, people will be friends, people will be on with each other, and we will make the best of whatever decision we have. Hopefully, from my point of view, it's a yes, and it's easier to make the best of that situation than the situation we have at present. But we wait and see. But I think we should be proud of ourselves and the nature of the debate we're having. And of course, the media will accentuate and exaggerate the parts of the debate that are the more extreme fringes or the more off-beam fringes. But we know from our day-to-day lives, speaking to people, that this debate is a fine and respectful debate. This is the second time this week I've had one in Lochboyston in South Uist. Only a third of the number, so I'm actually quite pleased to see so many here tonight. And yesterday we had a visit in Barratt from Prince Edward. I think another great sign of exactly what we have in this country, what we'll have after independence as well. Because when we become independent, we will still have, like Canada, where Prince Charles is at the moment, which you might have heard in Scotia yesterday, but we will still have the royal family. We will still be in the European Union, as has been conceded last week. We know we would be anyway. We will still be in NATO. We are only actually moving government and the decision-making from London to Edinburgh. We're moving powers from a forum where we have 8.4% of the voice to a forum where we have 100% of the voice. Where we have greater access to government ministers, to a place where we have difficult access to government ministers. And I don't blame the government ministers from Westminster. If you are a government minister dealing with 60 million people, it is going to be by definition 10, 11 times harder, 12 times harder for people to reach you than it's going to be for 5 million people. When I speak to friends in Iceland, and I mentioned the crash they had in 2008, did Iceland ever want to go back with Denmark? The answer is a clear no. Iceland wouldn't want to go back with Denmark at all. Alistair Darling says that independence is a one-way road. Alistair Darling is correct in one aspect of that. It is a one-way road. He says there's no going back. On that point, I probably disagree. Where he is right and where he's observing the situation is that once people become independent, they do not go back by choice. 100 years ago, the world had 50 independent states. Today, Europe alone has 50 independent states. The world has 200, just about. There are about 200 members of the United Nations. None of them have chosen to go back. And some of the reasons they choose not to go back, I would argue, are a simple reason of making their own choices. Since 1959, we are meant to live in a democracy. Let's forget about the House of Lords, which is always embarrassing to explain to politicians from the former Eastern Bloc as to how we are in a democracy where we have half our parliament that's not elected. It's all a bit tricky, that's we just kind of look down the way towards the chamber of the Green Bench. But if we look at the Green Benches, since 1959, Scotland's voice has only chosen in those 55 years, has only chosen the party, a governing party chosen for it for 33 years that were not of its choice. That's a very difficult thing. If you live in a country and you believe your country is a nation and not a region, to accept that point of view. And I'm quite sure that politicians of all parties at Westminster, if they were in some sort of union with another European country, a large European country or two, and they were finding their voice or their choice would never be government, they wouldn't throw in for very long, and I would say rightly wouldn't throw in for very long. We surely have to have a government that representing what our society wants, whatever that government is. And as I said in the beginning, whatever you vote in 2014, and if it said yes, you're very free to vote whatever you want in 2016. One of the difficulties, of course, I've got is in March 2016, if we do become independent, is I become unemployed. I do say in the Western Isles there are 26,000 people going to win from independence. There's one guy in these islands going to lose. I want you to think about him and not 26,000. His name is Angus. He travels to London on a weekly basis. He's got a lot to lose, and he says to the 26,000, how selfish are you to put your own interests first? Think about Angus. Think about his job. What's going to happen to Angus? Of course, it's a parody, but I see that in the faces of some of my colleagues at Westminster. Some who put themselves on a career structure at Westminster, hoping to maybe advance their own careers, liking being in London, maybe even find themselves in the House of Lords. Nice pension plan at £300 a day. I've got to say that if I was offered that, it would be difficult to say no, but don't tell Alex Hammond if there are any reports. But I think we have to look at what we have, where we're going. Our identities will still be the same wherever you describe yourselves. You keep on describing yourselves as that. The Norwegians are happy being Scandinavian, being Norwegian, being from Bergen, being whatever. We can still be British, be from Scotland, be from Wick, be from whatever. I don't think the important thing is your identity, and the important thing is where you govern from, and the choices that will be made on your behalf, and the values, surely, from that government are reflected in how you vote. There's a sweep of history happening, as I said, with 50 independent nations now in Europe alone, where there were 50 states in the world. And I think it's instructive to look at just the potential some people see for Scotland. It would be wrong to suggest that Scotland could not be another such successful independent country. Now that was from a man who lives at number 10 Downing Street, a Prime Minister called David Cameron, who said that in the last year or so. And I think David Cameron is absolutely right there. David Cameron realises the truth of the situation. It's interesting to see how the debate has changed. At one time Scotland was told it was too poor. Now they realise from the weight of evidence that Scotland can do it. And if I think back in my own family, when I was 8 or 9 years old in 1979, my parents were able to vote against an assembly. They went to vote against an assembly. The assembly was a movement on the status quo over that much. 18 years later, by the time we got the vote on the Parliament, which was probably the movement status quo by that much, my parents were ready to go that far. I would argue that independence is probably not such a big leap. We're only competing the powers of the Parliament we have. And I think it's a step that we really are ready to take in many ways. Some of us might not actually realise we're ready to take it, but when I look at the government we have at Edinburgh just now, and I knew those individuals, most of them before they went in government, I'm surprised in many ways. I'm not really surprised, but I'm impressed at what they've done. And I'm sure that they and those round about them, the colleagues round about them, could do much better. And I think the choices they've made since the crash of greater capital spending has helped Scotland's economy move on. One of my other favourite quotes is, the question is not whether Scotland can survive as a separate state. Separate might give you a bit of a clue, because every other country can be independent from this man, but not Scotland, it will be separate. He said, of course it could. And that was Alistair Darling. And again, it shows where the debate has moved, and how things have moved on from an assembly, from a parliament. And we're now talking about greater powers at least for that parliament. And I would say to anybody who's thinking of some extra powers of legal max, the great thing about independence, it contains legal max, it contains whatever Labour might promise, it contains whatever the Liberals might promise, and it contains whatever any other party might promise as well. And why are they promising this? They're promising this because the confidence of Scottish people is growing, people in Scotland, and that's actually an important distinction. It's not Scottish people, it's people in Scotland. And it doesn't matter where you're from, it matters what collectively we're going together. And people who come from whatever part of the country, or whatever part of the world, are absolutely welcome in Scotland. And hopefully will stay, and we'll see more people coming to Scotland if the country thrives. We look across the North Sea and we see a thriving country there. We see Norway. I was at a talk in the Norwegian embassy last Thursday, and Professor Fredrik Kjærstad from the University of Oslo spoke about where the Norwegian economy is. There are more people coming into work in Norway than there are in Finland, Sweden and Denmark combined, and such is the success of Norway. Norway, of course, has hit the natural lottery of the oil bonanza, and has a fund at the moment of $750 billion US. That means if Norway's oil stops tomorrow, that oil fund from past years pays them £16 billion per year, every year, is what Norway's past oil means to Norway. Our past oil means nothing to us if the oil stops tomorrow. When Norway's oil is eventually expected to run out, the money does not run out, and that's important because it's not actually the oil, it's the money, is $3.3 trillion US, the fund will top that, and that will pay $68 billion a year, which is more than we get at the moment, and that is what Norway will have with its independence, with its choices, each and every year on oil that was drilled years and years and years ago. We will not have that. I think it's only fair if we take a little moment or two And before we go to Leslie, to talk about some of the scare stories that have come the way, because I think we have to address the scare stories. And I think my favourite scare story is the scare story of the 13th of February this year. George Osborne, God bless him, he came to Glasgow. He told us all that we couldn't share the currency. He was quickly joined by Danny Alexander and Ed Balls. He could agree what they weren't giving Scotland, they couldn't agree what they were giving Scotland. But I think, at the moment I heard him speak, I was in London, I thought this is totally economic nonsense, but I thought, I was a bit worried politically, I thought he might actually scare the people. He's actually gone for this big sign, he's gone for bust here. Of course, by the time I came back to Scotland 2 days later, it was clear he'd run away from Bernard Ponsonby, he'd answered 3 questions, and people were actually annoyed at his high-handedness. And they were annoyed because he's economically illiterate, because without Scotland, the balance of payments out of the sterling zone will weaken the pound. The weaker pound, George Osborne, which he's not telling, that's why he's not taking the interviews in this, is making imports more expensive into his area and making holidays for his constituents more expensive, which, as a politician, believe me, if you're promising your constituents more expensive holidays, you find yourself in a pretty difficult situation. The government ministers, it's also important for us that we do have actually a sterling zone. We have a trading partner that's in the goodest possible economic shape, because we will be selling to them, and their purchasing power will determine what we can export. Ireland at the moment has 200. Ireland's main trading partner is the UK. There are 200,000 jobs in the UK dependent on a successful Ireland, so you can see the interdependence in there. Ireland has never traded so much with the UK and so integrated as it is just now, but they don't share a government. They are together in trade, but they're not together in politics. And I think that is the mistake that some people will try and make on the other side, will try and conflate the two. And then, of course, the government minister then saying that what seemed to be a hard and fast rule, it could be traded for nuclear weapons. We had Alistair Darling then saying we could have a referendum on whether we have a currency union. Well, if this is a hard and fast political rule, we're not going to have a referendum on something like this hard and fast political rule. The icing on the cake came from some information from the House of Commons Library, which told me that in the 1950s, the UK government was actively pursuing the Norwegians to come and join the sterling zone. So the hard and fast economic rules of one period were just completely torpedoed by their actions in yet another period. On Europe, I don't think that scare story is as resonant as it is at the moment. Jose Manuel Barroso is saying that a new state such as Scotland would not be in the European Union, which when Radio 5 Live phoned me that Sunday morning, I said, this is going to be great news in Reykjavik and Oslo, because remember, the European Union is on its knees to Reykjavik and Oslo to come and join. It also has a position paper on small states such as Andorra, Monaco and San Marino to come and join. So the idea that the European Union would leave Scotland alone, I think, is nonsense. And as Ian McCurter said in the Sunday Herald, one of the reasons they wouldn't do that is because, just say Scotland is kept outside the European Union for a wee while, and it was successful, other people might get ideas. So the bureaucracy within the European Union won't have that. Defence will be NATO, another scare story we hear about quite often. One of the realities is Scotland pays £3.5 billion into the UK Defence Fund. We only get £2.1 billion of that spent back in Scotland. Of the small, medium enterprises contracts for those size of companies, we would expect 8.4% of those contracts to go to Scottish firms. The reality is we get about 0.85 to 0.9% of those contracts to Scottish firms, so we're missing a trick there. The other thing, and I think there's a strand that goes through all of this. Some of these stories you will hear, and you know what the scare stories are complete nonsense. But the point of them is you only have to scare in their mind 5 to 10% of people, because that's what they think is the tipping point. I think one of the worst ones of the scare stories is the pension scare story, and to scare older people, when in reality the pensions take up 14.4% of Scottish GDP, 15.3% of UK GDP, meaning that pensions are actually more affordable in an independent Scotland than they are with the current independent UK. And when we see some of the news, we cast our minds back to last November, pensions in the UK were about the second lowest in Europe. They were behind countries such as Bulgaria, Hungary, and a number of other countries in Eastern Europe, which we would be surprised to see. The other point, I think, before I end, one of my other favourite scare stories is the one of foreigners. You're going to make people foreigners. Now, I happen to be half Irish. My mother was a district nurse who came to work in Bar in the 1960s. She was was one of those who was force-fed Irish Gaelic by De Valera. 90% of Ireland's kids hated this, 10% of them liked it. One of the 10% was my mother. She went to Barrow to understand Scottish, Gaelic, and she saw the local postman Mackay, who was my father, and she stayed there for the next 30 odd years. She was never a foreigner, in my eyes, she was just my mother. But actually I found out after she died that she wasn't actually a foreigner legally either, because there was an Act of Parliament at Westminster that stated in 1948, the Ireland Act, that Irish citizens of the Republic of Ireland would not be foreigners. Now, it kind of doesn't matter in a way, but in some ways, what is the big hang-up with the idea that somebody's a foreigner in the first place? And the second thing, if they are going to be foreigners, it's great if you just make a law that somebody's not a foreigner. And we do know that the Foreign Office is called the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, to indicate that citizens of Commonwealth countries aren't foreigners. So Canadians, Australians, New Zealanders are not legally foreigners, and people of the Republic of Ireland. So in many ways, the Foreign and Commonwealth Office should be called the Foreign, Commonwealth and Irish Office, to cover all. I might actually suggest that to Parliament. But this really is where we find ourselves at the moment. And I would say the other point is I'm one of the critics on the yes side of the unremittingly positive side of our narrative. If we vote no, it's not neutral. We're going to have £4 billion worth of cuts coming away. We've already had some cuts filtering down through the council, and I'm sure Gail Ross knows about exactly handling that at the moment, because it comes through the Scottish Government and then passed on then to the councils and then passed on to us at a local level. There are £4 billion worth of cuts going to come. Another issue is that I think that probably means tuition fees are unsustainable. It could be unsustainable. Now, we have nuclear weapons, and the fact that many people get exercised about that if they go wrong, will blow us all up and go on to death. One of the things that keeps me more awake at night is the fact I've got 3 daughters. And I would have to pay £9,000 for each one of those for each year in university. It's £108,000. I know it's a bit irrational, but nuclear global annihilation doesn't worry me as much than £108,000 for my daughters. But that is the reality of my situation. And I just put that in your minds because we are at the moment at a crossroads in Scotland. We've put, as I said in the beginning, power is in your hands. For the first time ever, you're the first generation of power in your hands. You're going to walk into that polling station on the 18th of September with power in your hands. This has not happened before. And if you want to keep that power in your hands, there's only one answer you can give. Because if you walk away from that polling station voting no, you really have abdicated responsibility for the governance of your society to a place where your voice is 8.4%, where the main governing party has 1 MP, and remember there are 2 panda bears in Scotland. Where is the endangered species, but who is making the choices about your country? You are making the choices on the 18th of September. If you want to keep making the choices, you vote yes. And it's not a scary thing at all, because how fearful are you about walking into that polling booth on the 18th of September? 90% of Scots are going to do that. They're taking that power, they're taking that chance. I would urge them to keep that chance, keep that power. And in years to come, we still will have that power. We'll still have the opportunity to decide about Scotland. I'm 43 just now. If we miss this, 27 years' time, I'll be 70. We're talking about that length of time. And I would urge you, vote yes on the 18th of September. It's the last thing you do. Thank you.
Questions on Angus' talk at the end of Leslie's. Okay, so Leslie,
thank you. Right, yourself from here. Right. Will you'll control it. Just as well he's a cousin of mine, isn't it? And in fact, I should sort of say, welcome. Thank you for inviting me, ladies, gentlemen, Aunt Kathleen, cousins, and folk from Thurso. So it's great seeing so many different folk here tonight. If you don't know, my mother's from Wick. She's Kathleen's sister, Helen Briddick, as she is now, Helen Moore as she was. My grandfather and grandmother lived along Seaforth Avenue, Magnus or Mikey, as you might have known him, and Catherine. So we came here from Belfast, as you'll hear. There's no kind of Wick twang in the back of my voice, but we grew up in Northern Ireland and came here every summer. Stayed with Kathleen, she's still kind of speaking to us, sort of, and had all the kind of delights that came from summers around here. You know, the sort of sugar bunnies in the Cliff Bakery, joining the library for the summer, going to all the different beaches there were, being in the Wick Gala Week and doing all the collections and, you know, the ritual humiliation when you went to the assembly rooms to have to recite something you'd half forgotten, all that kind of thing. So, so I kind of had a very vivid sense of Wick. I mean, probably more vivid than Belfast. Belfast was vivid in a different way at that point. I mean, quite a kind of dangerous way. And in many ways, I think my family never relaxed until they came home. And despite the fact we lived in Belfast, this was home. And when they came here, you could tell their behaviour was different. They relaxed. You knew you were home. So I've been thinking about this, and with reference to Scotland, for quite a while, because if Angus is the confident cop in this routine, I think I'm probably the more reflective cop, which is to try and ask this question, really. I mean, you can go through all the things that would come if you vote yes, if we become an independent state, but I think the question will still be in your mind, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Is it broke? If it is broke, how is it broke? And who can fix it? So actually, I would rather think about these things, because all the details and all the technicalities, sure enough, they're important. But if you're doing a job, you only need to worry about the standard of the equipment if you've actually got a problem in the first place. So I'm trying to talk a wee bit more about what I think there could be as a kind of issue there. And that's where I kind of find myself thinking from a very early age, really, about Scotland. And you'll see that Wick features quite large in this. Now, it's a paradox, Scotland, because on the one hand, as you know, it's a stunningly beautiful country. It has great diversity of landscape, it has incredible natural resources. I can remember from coming up here very early on, everybody knew that the Pentland Firth had the top tidal stream sites in Europe. You know, the energy that was in there. And we know then that we've got a kind of tremendous country. You only need to go abroad to come back and go, wow, at what's sitting on our own doorstep. And then on the other hand, you could see that there was an incredible amount of inequality. There were big problems about land ownership. There was a lot that just wasn't right in this place. If we did live in this fabulous nirvana, practically, of great landscape, of great natural resources, should we not be healthier? Should we not have a more equal society? Should we not really be cooking on gas, put bluntly? And we're not. So, you know, that's always puzzled me, how these two things sit together. And I guess when I was thinking about Scotland's future, you can ask this, what do we envisage for the future? And I think if you're kind of imagining, you can imagine two futures. One is that we keep doing, occasionally we do marginally better than, let's be blunt, England at things. So, for example, in the 2012 local elections, the turnout in Scotland was a miserable 38%, which is rubbish. But the year before, the local government elections in England was 32%. Resultamundo. Now, it's not, if you get to think, that the average across Europe is 70% turnout. The average across the Nordic nations is 80% without compulsion. So along a lot of these indicators, when you're looking particularly at democracy and well-being and health, we're actually all bumping along in the gutter together. Sometimes we're a couple of percentage points better, but actually, is that all we're looking for? What I'm imagining is something kind of different, which is to have the kind of complete step change, the big jump in standards and in expectations and in capacity that would happen if you began to look perhaps at Scotland as a kind of bit of the Nordic countries. Now, I don't mean that we suddenly become annexed. I don't mean that we are actually Norse, although probably half this room is. But I mean thinking that that's our benchmark. What I'm asking is, what's our benchmark? And to me, at the moment, we are allied in a nation which tends to look at success as meaning the top. You know, we're measured how well we're doing. Let's take, for example, the fact that we are a sporting nation, folks, because we won 10 Olympic gold medals last year. Now, actually, half of us cannot run for the bus. Now, you can take either measure. They're both true, but which one matters more? Now, to me, the one that matters more is where most folk are. I don't care too much about where the top is anymore, because nothing trickles down. So if we're going to try and think about a different way of measuring success for Scotland, it's got to be, to me, where the average folk are, where most folk are, not where the top is. And it needs to be perhaps comparing like with like, you know, where we want to be going. And a wee story on this one. I never learnt to ski when I was young, not surprising because we came hell for leather to Wick every time we had a holiday. And there's no ski slope here, I think. So things like that kind of passed the battle by. And so randomly we went to ski with my husband Chris's daughters in France. I was kind of talking when they explained how to stop. And I was going down this hill pretty fast and realising I didn't know how to do the snowplow, which skiers amongst you will know is what you need to stop. So I was kind of hurtling down the slope, and at the bottom I saw this wee lassie. And I was going straight for her. And I was just hurtling down. I was trying to, you know, move, but given that my routine was pretty limited at that point, I was still going straight for her. So just before her, I kind of flung myself to one side to avoid a pretty horrible collision, dented my head, got no sympathy, and, you know, made a bit of a fool of myself. So Rosie came over and said, "Were you not listening to the instructor?" And I said, "Well, clearly not." And she said, "What he said was, you look where you want to go, and your skis will follow." Where were you looking? Well, I was looking at the wee lassie. You know, I was trying to avoid her, so I was looking at her. And at that moment, I had one of these things where I just thought, yet again, she had come out with one of these incredible truths for a young lassie. You know, this way it can happen. Where actually, that's a life statement. The more you look at something, it's where you end up going. And personally speaking, I don't want to spend a lot of time looking at the innards of even the UK particularly, because its standards are not good enough. They're not good enough for the whole of the UK, actually. Where I want to look is into space, if you like, where we need to go. And where we need to go is comparing ourselves with every small social democracy around us, which is kind of the way we've been voting largely for the last 100 years as well. So that's my thing is, let's look not at where we've been, but where we want to go. Where do we want to go? And I suspect where we don't want to go is to be a sort of tartan version of England in terms of outcomes. We kind of want something better. To be honest, I want something better for the whole of the UK. But I voted all my lifetime for those kind of policies that I think would benefit everyone, and I've found that the tail can't wag the dog. We can't seem to shift opinion in England that has a different view, that the market can run everything, and that that kind of society can work. Personally speaking, I don't want any more of that now. I want a change. So this is kind of what I would like to take us through. You'll note here that this is a different kind of map because it places at the centre the Faroe Islands. And that's because the people who made the map come from the Faroe Islands. And one of the great bonuses of making your own maps is putting yourself at the centre of your life. So, Remonto. So here we are, Wick and Hammerfest. Now, every time I've done this, we talk about the book. I've asked people in the audience if they've ever been to Wick. And you'd be surprised, actually, half the universe has been to Wick. You know, it's an extraordinary thing. So let's assume we all have a bit of a knowledge of Wick here. Hammerfest. Has anybody been to Hammerfest? Nobody. Well, I think you find it interesting. Were you on the Hurtigruten boat, sir? No? You were. Now, Wick and Hammerfest, this is Wick, let's say, I know there's some folk from Thurso in the world, but let's say the northernmost county town of Scotland, will we? No. Okay. Right. And Hammerfest, unquestionably the northernmost county town of Norway. It is actually the world's northernmost town, although you can kind of have a wee bit of arm wrestling on that as well. In Hammerfest, it's cold enough that in the winter, when it's a really cold winter and it's -50, the kids can throw boiling water in the air and watch it turn to ice. And it's not that cold here, is it? Never. So, I mean, there's similarities and there's differences, but you can see in 1900, the two towns were very similar. They both were massive ports, obviously. Wick, I'll probably town more correctly, was a big herring port, and Hammerfest has always been a huge cod port, so they're actually not that dissimilar. But then things changed. Hammerfest was transformed by things that couldn't happen here. One way was by energy. This house here marks the place where in 1897 Hammerfest became the first town, again arguably, in Northern Europe to get street lighting. Now you may think that's me a biggie, but if you've ever experienced the Arctic winter, which is 3 months of solid darkness, you'd get that was kind of quite important. And they financed it by putting a tax on beer, which the fishermen were not that happy with, but in a war. After a year it broke down, they put a little hydro in on the river, which is how they did it. So they got the hydro in, that was all fine, it broke down after a year. There was a bit of a meltdown on the fishermen front particularly, but they discovered they just hadn't insulated it well enough. No one had ever put this kit in so far north. They did, they fixed it, and this is an important point. These guys didn't just sort of give up when something went wrong. They fixed it, they thought about it, then they realised if they moved where they put the hydro, they could get even more energy. So actually after about 10 years, every house in Hammerfest had a light inside it. Again, you might not think that's much, although I guess coming from the Highlands where, you know, had it not been for Tom Johnson and the power to the Glens, we might all be sitting in gas lights tonight. So here we are, they are cooking away, got their street lights, and then they think again, what would happen if we took the turbine from the river and put it into the Clausen Straits? Now this is my pal Inge-Lisa Matheson, who's standing in front of there, where they actually put a turbine there and started to investigate tidal turbines. She's pretending to be a turbine because we realised when we went there, you can't see it, because it's under the water. But, you know, the Clausen Straits is a frisky little bit of water. It's not a patch on the mummy of the Malden Heather Firth, right enough, but it was enough to let them test out their tidal turbines. They put them in for a while, they took them out, they modified it, they put them back, they tested it, they took readings, they took it out, they modified them, put it blah, 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 blah. And the result is that that company, the one that started in 1897 with the hydro, is Hammerfest Throne. That company is the same company whose tidal turbines in next year, yes it is next year now, will turn Isla into the world's first tidally powered island. And it should have been us. There is no reason why that should not have been us. Do we not have engineering skills? Do we not know the sea? Do we not have the resource in terms of, you know, straits like the Penland Firth? Of course we do. We have all those things. So why were we not able to develop the technology to harness our own natural resources? And I think it could be because, go back to the beginning, could anybody here have had enough control over the land, over a river, to go in and put a hydro on it without asking a laird? No. Could anybody then have gone back 5 years later and said, oh actually, we want to move all this kit further up the river? Probably not. If it came to questions of the foreshore of the sea, you'd then have the Crown Estates Commission to deal with if you wanted to do something here. In every respect, the natural resources that the Norwegians have known that they could touch, harness, measure, try, make mistakes in, own, are not resources we have had that same connection with. And this is what it does. I mean, land issues, land reform, land ownership is not some abstraction. It does this to you. It means you don't have enough practice with land, rivers, sea, resource to be able to come up with 100 years worth of experimentation, which is what each Hammerfest Throne turbine represents. So that's kind of one story. The next one is housing. You probably can't see this too well, but folk here will probably know that Norway was occupied by Germany during the Second World War. There may be folk here who've got some vague links with the Shetland bus folk who helped out the Norwegian resistance fighters. But right up in the north of Norway, they had a particularly hard time because when the Germans withdrew, they burnt every single house in Finnmark, which is an area half the size of Denmark. Everything, every house, kennel, hut, the works, apart from 3 churches. And they left in October 1944. The king at that point was living in Norway, in London, the King of Norway, And he appealed on the radio to folk, don't come back. Don't come back, even though they've left, because it's the beginning of winter, there is nothing there, and we need time to get our act together, get houses for you. And no one paid the blindest bit of difference. Nobody paid any attention to that. The next week, they were all back. Because they expected to rebuild their own lives themselves. They weren't even listening to a much-loved king in terms of advice. They came back. And this that you see here, if you can see it, is women in their fur coats and hats sitting outside in 1944, the first Husbanken office. And this is the National Housing Bank of Norway. Why am I telling you all this? Because there's an interesting thing underpinning that. And it is that what the National Housing Bank did was to give people a small amount of money to go and build their own house with their friends. It's a system called dugnad, which means community self-help. And that was the way Norway was rebuilt. It wasn't rebuilt by a council going in and doing everything for people. It was built largely by people doing it themselves with money from the state, but doing it themselves on their own terms, in their own ways. And here today, this is a thriving town of 9,000 people. About 80% of the housing is that original housing. It dates from the stuff that people built themselves. Now that kind of tells you something, because the people expected to be given the opportunity to do it themselves. They expected to be able to use the skills of building they had. It's still the case that self-build is massive in Norway. I spoke to some folk who came over from a construction course in the west of Norway recently. There was about 12 of them. 8 of them were lassies, for starters. And all of them had self-built homes. None of their parents were builders. So it's a different way of looking at things. It's a very, to quote Pat here, it's a very independent-minded way of looking at things. What happened in Scotland and in Britain was basically council housing. Nana lived in a council house. What we got was tremendous in the sense that it let people get out of what were private slums. But there was a price to pay, and it was conformity, playing by the rules, not changing the front door knocker colour, and not being effectively in charge of your life. And I think this is a difference that kind of separates the countries still. Now it means something. I don't know if you can see this. I love this picture, particularly this old lady here with the wee red cheeks. You'll notice that these ladies have got sleighs. Now all the old ladies in the north, this is probably about -18 that day, and it's hard ice they're on. They came down this one-in-one slope and practically took the legs off of me, which is why I stopped and just said, stand there till I take a picture of you. And this is tremendous. These wooden sleighs, all the older people use them. You'll see they've got the messages in the front here. And the thing that's extraordinary about it is, you know, it's a hard thing to manoeuvre. There's a very old-fashioned brake. But nobody, no older person would dream of being kept inside just because it was ice. You can go along the streets in Hammerfest, which is, you know, got a fair old hill behind it, and you can see flocks of old women coming down on their sleighs. And honestly, it puts a lump in your throat because it makes you realise that this is the product of a totally different outlook. Because it's the same, it's far worse conditions, but you know, here, right enough, if it's bad weather, anybody who feels that they might be a bit frail doesn't even cross the threshold. But that's a different kind of country where people have got to the stage of feeling, actually, I'm capable of going out. I want to be allowed to go out. I don't want to be shut up inside. I want to do things because I can. And here is Inger Lisa again, doing much the same thing on top of her hut. I'm doing a PhD a bit weirdly at the moment, comparing huts and cabins in Scotland and Norway. We have the lowest number at our latitude in the world. The Norwegians have the highest number. And the folk in Finnmark have the highest number of the lot of them. Everybody has a hut, or 2 or 3. Because land isn't a biggie. Land is cheap and accessible, and it's not contentious. You've got to begin to think, actually, that what people do in life is they consume what is cheap and easy. So the Norwegians consume land, and we consume food and booze. And it is that simple. You can just see the connections completely. There's a family, Ingelise's mum is a teacher, her dad is a fisherman, and between them they have 6 homes. It's extraordinary, but they can give you reasons for them all. There's one that they go ice fishing at, there's one that they collect cloudberries at, there's one that they go, I can't remember all of them now, but the point is wherever they have a function in nature, they just build a hut, because it's not a problem, because there is not one guy owning the whole place. So they go out to these huts all the time, particularly in the winter, get their ski mobiles out, and this is her just cheerfully chucking a ton block of snow off the roof. You know, there's no kind of worries about, well, wait till a guy comes, where's the health and safety, blah, 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 blah. They just get on with it, because it's their world. Or I think of the degree of kind of almost infantilization that happens in Scotland by contrast, where you can't touch a thing here without feeling someone's going to be on your shoulder saying to you, you shouldn't touch that. And then there's Wick. Now, okay, this is a bad day. Actually, I think this was the day after there was that hole in the, remember Kathleen, there was that hole in the pier down at the wall. But, you know, Wick lost its port status, was it 8 years ago, or maybe it was longer? It has problems, and it's got a big difference with Hammerfest. Apart from the things I was mentioning, Wick doesn't run Wick. Hammerfest runs Hammerfest. It has. It's never been amalgamated into anything else. Hammerfest Commune runs and raises its taxes there, keeps most of its taxes there, and is run by people from Hammerfest. That's normal. What's happening here is not. And this is kind of an interesting map that shows you one of the difficulties we've got. This is the kind of, I mean, if I had time sometime, I would do some of them with the Trade Descriptions Act for calling this local authorities. This is not local. These massive strategic regional authorities, which we call local, are the largest in Europe. They're weird. And this is hard to get your head around sometimes because you always think where you've grown up is normal. I grew up in Belfast, and when I was at school, it was normal to sit beside windows where the glass was crisscrossed with sellotape, so if there was a bomb, the glass would come in one injury-minimising chunk. And when we moved to Glasgow, I used to feel quite nervous sitting beside windows with no sellotape on them. Now, you might think I was weird. I thought they were weird for quite a long time. So there's two things to say. One is, it's weird to have the size of local government we've got because it's not local and we don't seem to notice or care too much, except in a grumbling way. It's also weird to have the concentration of land ownership we've got. No one else in the developed world has got what we've got. So these are two ways in which we are not normal. And it's important to get that in our heads, I think, because otherwise we tend to accept things too easily, which don't work for us. This is what we would have in Scotland if we had the European average size of council. Not the smallest ones, not France, which, if anyone's of French extraction, is a bit barking, but an average size. Now look at it. You can see here that Wick would have its own council. Thurso would, gosh, you know, there'd be lots of places with their own councils. That's normal. So, you know, we have got this kind of template of largeness in Scotland, where we've put up with massive feudal estates for a long time. It's almost as if our democracy now marks it by having same-sized, huge local government units. And this is not to decry or attack anyone who is a councillor. They're doing an impossible job, because you cannot be a representative of that. You just can't. You can't run around the place enough. And the point is, what does it say to the people who live in a place that they need someone first for the parish to keep coming in and telling them what they need? There's nobody else does this except us. And it's part of a top-down structure of governance that we again have taken as normal. We pay our taxes to Westminster. Westminster now gives some money back to the Scottish Government. The Scottish Government gives some to councils. And the councils, well, somewhere along the line, community councils, you might think, well, they have an average budget, an annual budget of £400. You're having a laugh. £400, and it has to be spent on stationery. There is nowhere in the world that has such a weak force of community governance. So all the way down the line, our model is to pay to the top and see it trickle down. Now, in the process, that disempowers people, it removes any direct connection with the place you're in and the powers that you have. And again, nobody else does it. If you look at the most successful countries, if you look at Sweden, for example, if you have to earn more than £35,000 a year before you pay a penny in tax to central government. And again, you might think, that's a bit strange. They think we're strange. They say, why would you pay money to the centre when all the services you use are local? But you think about it, that's true. You get, your health service, your education, your housing, your roads, all the things you pay money for by and large are here. So why are we always doing this thing that we pay to people? And loons like this, Jill, down the road, way down to the places that it's intimate. Bye, Angus, forever. And we've accepted this for such a long time. It's daft. And, we're sitting now, we've opened Pandora's box, actually, thank goodness, with the referendum, because I think people are now beginning to ask questions, not just about our relationship within the United Kingdom, but actually the whole blooming shitting match, because quite a lot of it isn't working, and not all of it is the product of, actually, problems within the UK. We have problems to sort out ourselves here, and the question is, what structure will best allow us to get to grips with this? Because I think we actually do need to get to grips with it. Now, I know this is a lot of numbers. There's only one or two that really matter here. This is for those who don't believe the thing about how large our local government is, and I apologise because you can't see over there very well. But let's take Germany, for example, or Germany, as I think it should be commonly called here. Germany is the most powerful, successful country in Europe. And one of the reasons for that is that after the Second World War, the Brits went in and made sure that the structure of Germany became properly federal, properly devolved, properly decentralised, because they knew that was the best way to make sure that a guy like Hitler never got his hands on all the goodies again. So it was our guys who went in and created a decentralised structure, came back to Britain, most centralised country in Europe, pulled the drawbridge up. That'll do nicely. We know how to make different structures work. We've been to other countries and enforced it. And yet when we come back here, very few changes were made. So here's Germany. Its big success story, its biggest reason for success is the decentralised nature of its economic and social life. So for example, currently, and throughout the crash, only 18% of Germans banked with the Deutsche Bank, the big Royal Bank of Scotland equivalent. The bulk of folk banked with their own local banks, and they didn't go bust. Now again, across Europe, that way of banking with small local banks, the way we used to be, actually, when we still believed in some sort of reciprocity and we still had smaller banks, that is normal. We're weird. Again, you've got to get this. We are out of kilter with everyone who's working better than we are. And if anyone doubts that, the AAA credit-rated nations currently are all the Nordics and all the properly federal countries of Germany, Australia, Canada. Those countries, if you like, are sort of right-sized. And there's maybe a bit of a lesson in there. So here's Germany. The average population of each municipality is 6,000, well, let's say 7,000 people. The average here is 115,000 in Scotland. That means that the actual size of each municipality in Germany is 15 square kilometres. That's the average size of a council that does the same stuff as Highland Council, same powers. The average size in terms of square kilometres in Scotland is 990 square kilometres. Now just look there. We're way off on a road. So I think it's important to get a grasp of that. This is really not, people might think big is beautiful, it's efficient, is it heck? Because what it's failing to do is harness us. There's one big resource in our society, it's us. And if our energy can't actually be souped up and used within the body politic, it's lost. And to me, at the moment, that's pretty well where we are, through no fault of the individuals concerned, but through the structures. You need to keep going here, Raimondo. Just keep dying away. The other thing I just wanted to point out is this. it has its impact on how many people stand for election. Here it's 1 in 2,000. In Norway it's 1 in 80. So you get far more vibrant democracy naturally when you've got lots of rear councils. You also get lots more women, lots more young people, because you're not being sort of expelled, as Angus is, down to the other end of the world pretty well when you're standing for a council. You can be the activist everyone respects locally, and you can have the support of some structure to make sure things work. Right, I'm just going to say another couple of things here. Perhaps the most important thing, well, it is children. And here again, there are differences that relate back to other things. In the Nordic countries, all children have the right to an affordable kindergarten place between the ages of 1 and 6 or 7. Now, it's strange this, all the Nordics have kids going to school at 6 or 7, not 4 or 5. And you wonder, if we actually were able to make something rational, when would we send kids to school? I'm not sure. They have the best outcomes, again, tediously, in the world practically. And some of that seems to be because they allow children to just be children up to the age of 6. They're doing things together. Their big emphasis is on teamwork, problem solving, sharing, learning to speak, communicating, and they do that through outdoor kindergarten. So you can go again in -28 and you'll see all the kids are outdoors. It's normal. There was a time when I was trying to take a picture of these kids and try and get them to smile. Now you'll know that's never, it's never easy to get kids to smile when they don't want to. But the other reason is, it's not unusual for them to be outside. If our kids were outside in the snow, they'd be like, wow, we got out today. This is the one day we got out. Remember this day, They'd be so excited. But for these kids, it's nothing. They're outdoors practically from where they're born, because if they're not at school, at kindergarten together, doing everything outside in the snow, they're off with their mothers and fathers at the weekend to the huts, scooting around outside. Outside is normal. And you'll know today, you'll have heard in the news, we, the Scots, have claimed this today, a mighty F for everything, for our levels of fitness, F. For our connections with the outdoors, F. We are practically the worst of the 20-something countries surveyed. How can this be? We have the most marvellous nature outside the door. Why are we not reflecting that? And some of it is this. You'll notice here that these lasses here are doing a dangerous thing. They are patting a coo. Right? Now, you can see here that health and safety would be right in there. You can't pat coo. I mean, you could get all sorts of stuff. Actually, they co-locate nurseries and farms in Norway, partly because it's diversification, partly because it teaches the kids about nature. They learn about the cycle of life and death. The farmer I was talking to there, where the kids go in and they collect the eggs from the hens, a recent survey in Britain discovered the majority of kids in Glasgow don't know that eggs come from hens. The kids go in, pick up the eggs, they clean them, put them in the wee punnets, take them to town, sell them for funds for their wee trips. They do the same with tomatoes in the summer, they make hay. They have a great time helping the farmer. And he tells me that the one day there is nobody absent is when they dissect a dead coo. And when I did a slightly sort of involuntary, really, he just looked so disappointed in me, like I was an American. I'm sorry, I was an American. I just really didn't get it. He said, but actually, this contact with animals strengthens the autoimmune system of children. All the evidence tells us this. All the evidence tells us that the more engaged play kids have before the age of 3, whether it's at home but it needs to be engaged, or whether it's in kindergarten, the more vocabulary they get, the more soft skills they learn, the more employable they become. We know this. But we keep putting our money, because we're doing that top-down thing, and because we're doing that elite thing, we put our money into universities. We put our money down over here. We're not putting our money where it would have its greatest return for society, and that's not to be pretty well. So, we can choose to do that. What we're doing now, to coin the phrase of someone who's looked at this, is we're retrofitting skills onto broken teenagers. And we know we're doing it, and we keep doing it. Why? Are we kind of powerless in all of this? And if you kind of look on, actually you do become powerless. This is a Norwegian woman who tried to set up a Nordic-style kindergarten in Coatbridge of all places. And so the idea was the barnhage, tells you where we get some of our language from as well. The idea was the kids were going to be outdoors, they were going to be able to walk out the same way as they did in Norway. No, because the council said that this wooden wall had to be put up in case paedophiles came to look at children. And then this bench, which is another cunning thing that the Norwegians do. If you have a high bench and you have these long bench things to sit on, you know yourself if you go to a pub or something and you have to sit these, they're very difficult to get in without falling over. Well, that makes the kids help one another. Everything that's in these places is designed to make kids help each other. So that's why it's there. And that was also ruled out. You can't use it because it's 6 inches higher than the normal height of a table. And if a child jumped off it onto its head, it would hurt itself. Now, you know, this level of kind of infantilization, which is what it is just so common in our society. I was speaking in Lithgow at an event, and there was a chap there, we got to about this point, and he said, exactly this happens in Lithgow. He said, there's an underpass in Lithgow, and there's a light bulb in it that never works. And at this point in the audience, there was a collective sort of, because he clearly had mentioned this about 1 or 4 million times. So he said, you know, it never works. I go in there, we pay the council, and it never works. It's broken, and it never works. And I said to him, well, I don't know, why don't you just put a couple of light bulbs in your pocket and fix it? There was like a big silence. You don't say that to this guy, you know. And he said, I can't do that. It's not my job to do it. The council should fix it. You know, it's, listen. You know, your blood pressure is clearly through the roof. Everyone in the room bar you has fallen asleep. Your knuckles are white with attention as this light bulb in your life. Lose it. Take some light bulbs. Take the action. Fix the light bulb. And for just a second, he'd go, I could just take a light bulb. It would be over. I could fix it. And then just as suddenly something hit him, he said, no, I couldn't. Because, you know, I would just get done for defacing council property. And, you know, come on, you know, you've seen this a million times in all your different walks of life. This is not the behaviour of people who are trusted as citizens. So remember the old ladies who were so trusted that they could weave down a slope in -18 on ice? You know, the people who are trusted to be able to go and build their own houses, that's trust. That's as a government on the one hand saying, we know that if we give the resources to you, you'll fix it. You'll fix it better than we can fix it, and in the process, you will fix yourselves. Right, that's the kind of government I want here. That's the sort of society I think we need here, because where we are at the moment is we are not trusted to organise a proverbial in the proverbial. And what that tells us every waking day, we can't fix the light bulb, you are not up to the game. You are not to be trusted. I must say, with this government who I think are centralising things far too much, we're at the one moment being told we're capable of taking the step towards independence, and at the next moment told we're not capable of organising how to tie our own shoelaces. We must get to a stage of consistence, where people are consistently seen as powerful agents in their own communities, whether that's at a small level in Wick, whether that's at a larger level in the Highlands, a larger one in Scotland, a larger, so on and so on. And the top-down stuff has just got to stop. You know, probably I was very involved in Egg, the Sunny Republic of Egg, as it could now be called, which I was a trustee of for 8 years. The reason I was a trustee is because I couldn't be evicted. That was the reason all the trustees were chosen at the beginning, because the sheer act of simply organising to consider an alternative, to consider a community buyout, was considered threatening enough to lead many people to think they would be evicted if they had joined that. Actually, it didn't help. They were all threatened with eviction for, you know, blowing their noses at some point. So that was how Egg was in 1992. That's Keith Dellenberg in one of his houses there. This is the kind of guys who've come after that. This is Dean, who is a sea kayaker. He came over on the 12th of June 1997 for the first buyout day, the day of the buyout. He met a lassie there, they settled down. This is his daughter. He never went back. But like, I was Brendan's mum from Ireland, I think, although possibly a shorter journey. And that's the kind of thing that's happening there, because it can. And what's happening on Egg, you could say, is a microcosm. Okay, you could say it's such a tippy island, but it can't be a microcosm of Scotland. But here's the thing. It went from a situation with just ludicrous situations, where people were all dependent on diesel on one of the best islands potentially for a mixed energy system, which they now have, because they couldn't get access to the land to put anything except a tiny hydro on. They couldn't get land for anything, even old folks' housing. So lots of old folk were living in absolutely appalling conditions with cold water, living in one room with weights holding down the skylight. You know that old one, so they don't flap around in the wind. And it changed. So actually, there's now full employment now, because the guys have spent a lot of time pulling the housing up to scratch. But the biggest achievement, their children stayed. And their children stayed because they were able to build housing there. Because once I got control of land, it did shared equity deals with young folk. So they're able to get going, build a house, and if in the future they decide to leave, they pay some of the equity back to the Isle of Egg Trust. Is that rocket science? How can we not do that everywhere? How can we not do that? Because that would let everybody start moving right now. In fact, does it remind you of something? It's like the community self-help. That's as near Dugnad in Scotland as you're going to get. Because some right-minded people own the land and know what to do with it. And this really is the end of me. I think there's a couple of elephants in the room about our capacity as people. And I know it wasn't said in a bad way, but I think it was my nana who often said, it's a family of leavers we've got. And that's maybe an expression, is that just our family, or is that one around? And in a way it was seen as a kind of badge of success to be able to go to the university for whatever reason, to be able to leave here. And it's shocking really, because that was always seen as quite a success. I think that relates to another kind of worry people have, that the best left. That when you look back towards the time of the clearances, when people realised the appalling deal they were getting, and they realised it wasn't going to change anytime soon, the folk with their heads screwed on just skedaddled, they go out while they could. And the folk who are left are the rump. Hollow rump. That's us. Now actually, I don't actually entertain that for a second. All the experience I've had of people in this country is actually the opposite. Because people have had very little support from governments, from councils, from structures which are wrong-sized, top-down, and generally hostile to the slight equity problem which is you, we have had to have the capacity of leviathans. We have had to have superhuman determination. The people on Egg had to do nothing for 8 years, but single-mindedly try to raise 1.56 million quid, when most of them couldn't raise 20 quid for a sack of coal. Now, if that demonstrates some lack of human capacity, I don't know what kind of gods stride other nations. But all I see here are people putting their damnedest into community developments, which sometimes work, and sometimes don't work. And that's the terrible thing of it, when people pour energy into projects that just get nowhere for no good reason. And I think it eats people up when that happens. So I don't get this for a second about the lack of capacity. The only difference there is between us and the Nordic people, and that's as a result of studying them, living over there, whatever, is their governments have trusted and empowered them and put them at the centre of all policy making. Ours didn't. So you can go to Norway and there can be pretty shabby doctors' surgeries, the roads are bough in many places, but you bet your bottom dollar, when you're talking about services for people, they're top notch. And their outlook is again quite simple. It is that services should be excellent and attractive for the affluent and affordable for all. Because that increases social solidarity. It means people are happy to keep paying in taxes. It improves trust. It means everybody uses the same services, and that creates a good society. And actually, I think that kind of is self-evidently a good thing. So I think it's important to say the capacity of the Scots, I think, is enormous. We doubt it. We doubt it because we haven't sometimes had enough different ways to experience it. You need to do a little bit of light lifting together to know what your fellow person can do. And you know, in all of this, I'm not interested in the capacity of Alex Salmond or the cabinet or even the Gallus Angus, though he is a marvellous man. Because, you know, if you're going on a big boat trip, it's nice to know that the captain knows where he's going or thinks he knows where he's going. But you know who you're also working for, who you're also relying on? The crew. Right? And so if we're going anywhere, we need to believe we in this room have the capacity to change, to kind of handle our country, to handle our council, to handle our lives. And I think it would have been a good move to put more in our hands by way of control, because by now we have got the message that we're actually pretty capable folk when we come to be able to run things. So the final point is the land. Now, just as people have had this worry about the capacity of the Scot, we've also had this worry about the capacity of the land. Angus, coming from Barra, is eyeing up your pastures. He's seeing great land here. But a lot of the time, people look at some parts of the Highlands. I can remember, where was it that was parcelled up? Was it off the Casimir Road? Where was it that was put to wee? Campster, that's right. You know, sold people for £1 a square so they could become a laird of Campster in a little square yard or something. And largely, people kind of thought, well, okay, how foolish. They actually looked at Campster land and just thought, it's all hopeless anyway, so we're for them. And actually, that's another wound in our appreciation of our country, because it is not that rubbish. A lot of folk, I think, sometimes think it's not fair, perhaps, that we have these large sporting estates, but to be honest, what else could you do with the land? It's rubbish. Now, these two folks set out to say it's not. And this is Ron Greer and Derek Gretzwell from Perthshire. This is a bit of land down the Spittle. If you go, you know, if you're coming from the south and you go up, past everything to Calvin, and then beyond that, with a sort of desert, you know, there's nothing. That's where you're getting to. Ron's big interest in life is the Arctic char. Now, let me tell you, he can bore for the universe on this. And his interest in the loch was the Arctic char is dying in all the lochs of Scotland. It's dying out. And the reason he figures is because of this. In the food chain of a wee loch, and what am I saying this here, Kate? This is bound to be an angler who knows more than me. But what the fish need is wee beasties. What the wee beasties need is leaf litter. They need leaf litter at some point to get the chain working. And there's no leaves falling into the loch. They're basically, if there is any trees at all, they're too far away. The usual thing is this bare terrain that you've seen. It's the product of overgrazing. So the fish are being progressively phased out because we're not getting leaves into the lochs. So Ron decided to try and prove that there could easily be forests everywhere which would improve the stock of the fish. That was his interest. And this is what he started with. I hope you can see that. Would you start with that? That just looks like a golf bunker. But that is average bits of land in the overgrazed areas of what should be some of the richest parts of Scotland anyway. That's what he started with, and his theory about planting was that he would put lupins and Scotch broom in first because that would return nitrogen to the soil. They would grow the trees through that because they would give some shelter and they would raise the temperature at the root, at the base, which all would help the trees actually grow. And everyone said, you're mad, it'll never work. So year one, there were lupins, right enough, but not much in the way of Scotch broom. And everyone said, you are mad, there are no trees and you've killed the Scotch broom. So the next year, there's Scotch broom. And they said, you are mad, you've killed the lupins now, and there's no trees. You know, this is not going to work. Year 5, trees on that very golf bunker. And now, after 10 years, there's a little forest. It's a beautiful forest. It's got wild strawberries in it, it's got dragonflies, it's the kind of place you kind of imagine but you don't expect to see somehow in Scotland. And at that point, showing that they had managed to do this, the guys applied and were backed by Scottish Enterprise, unbelievably, to go for 100,000 acres of Perthshire to turn into exactly the same thing. That whole area they were going to try and buy up. They were going to make it a community trust, and they calculated that it would leave Pitlochry, Burnham and Dunkeld energy self-sufficient forever once it was up, by just coppicing, pollarding the trees, so not knocking them down, but just taking off the branches, which with the fuel prices today, that could be a reconsideration. And it could be a prototype for all communities to be able to get energy locally. I think you can sense what's coming here because everything looks too good, doesn't it? It works. You've got Scottish Enterprise money behind you. There's a bid. And then someone asked, do they have academic qualifications? Now, that's what they heard. It might or might not have been the reason because actually nobody even bothered to explain. The bid was just dropped. So that's it. That little bit of fenced-in forest, if you could get past all the gates, all the padlock gates and everything down the Spittle, you can go along and see that. And I would imagine that it sort of breaks Ron's heart. Because, you know, he tried his utmost there. There was no reason for that to be turned down, except that in this country, the professional qualifications matter hugely. And just the fact that you can do something is very often not good enough. Well, this has to change as well, because that kind of thing just happens far too often. Oh, and can you just skip through 2 or 3 thoughts there? Aye, this is just the only thing worth saying at the end as well, is this question of professionalisation stops people having the confidence to fix things. This is 2 of the bravest people I've ever met, Muriel Alcorn and Phil Welsh, from West Whitlawburn in Rutherglen. Anyone been to Rutherglen? Right, it's got its problems. These guys in 1989, they discovered the council had actually no money, it was given money for refurbishments, and it planned to spend it all in East Whitlawburn because it was low-rise and easier to fix. And these guys realised they would basically never have the cash to fix their high-rise flats. So what they had at that time was a kind of challenge. Do we just sit here pretty, you know, accepting this, or do we do something? So they decided to go for a buyout in 1989 of these flats. They had terrible problems. The verandas were falling off, the glass wasn't properly fitted, the wind was coming straight into the rooms in certain directions. You know, it was damp or works. The only good point of ever having a Tory government was that there was one at the time, and it so wanted to have housing out of council control that it gave them money to take their housing stock and to do a community buyout. It took them 2 goes to get enough people supporting it to have a go, but on the 29th of November 1989, these guys in West Whitlawburn woke up to be the owners of 890 of the worst flats in Europe. Yes. I mean, that takes unbelievable courage to think that these guys, who are some of the least educated, most deprived Scots, for which read Europeans, could think that they could do better with their flats than the council, and they did. And they did lots of things to improve this place. But when I said to them, you know, did you have management experience? How did you get the confidence to do this? And they said, no, nobody had management experience, no. And then somebody said, well, come on, Phil, you were a shop steward of the Boilermakers Union for 37 years. You know, I mean, there was some management in that, eh? And actually, he ran not 1, but 3 junior football teams. Now, I used to think junior football teams were like 16-year-olds or something. They're not. They're grown men like you chaps here, and you're animals. So he didn't just run 1 team like that. He ran 3 teams like that, and he was still living to tell the tale. No management experience. Muriel was a nurse. No management experience. And the 2 other women who were there at the beginning with the pioneers were shop assistants. They each ran a shop on their own in the most deprived part of Glasgow. No cavalry, no backup, nobody but them running the whole shebang. No management experience. No. This is just no letters after your name, no university degree, no clipboard, no authority figure telling you that you can do what you want.
These are just people who innately have got some of the best people skills in Scotland. And because they were pushed right against the wall, they took the decision to trust themselves. Extraordinary confidence that they had in one another, perhaps because they knew one another better than sometimes we do. So they did that, and the place has really worked. Meanwhile, across in East Wick, if you can't see this, this says furniture pickup. And this is because in the East, where you're still waiting for the council to do everything, what happened was someone had an old sofa, they threw it out, the kids set it alight, it nearly killed the people in the flat beside it. So the progress is, the council wrote furniture pickup on paint on the road in the square outside these houses. Now what you do is you drag your sofa or your mattress to the centre and leave it at the furniture pickup point. The council still don't come and pick it up quickly, the kids still set it alight, but nobody dies. Now, come on. You know, this is what we've settled for, and nobody, people are mildly surprised at that. That's outrageous. Because it's so simple to get right, and it's very often the simple things that tell you when something's wrong. Do you know, like the canary down the coal mine, it's quite simple. If it keels over, get out. This is simple. When you have this kind of lack of capacity, and lack of trust, and lack of power down at the local level, something is very, very wrong. So my thing is really to come back to all this. We're here talking about independence. Yes, we are. But what I'm asking, I suppose, to think about is, at the beginning I was saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It is broke. It's been broke for kind of quite a while. It's more broke in some places than other places, and we do need to fix it. And the question, I don't like being told what to think myself, so I wouldn't say it to anyone else, but the question is, what level of control do we need to fix it? What kind of energy do we need to fix it? And what sort of focus do we need? Because it can't be done by politicians. It must be done by all of us, understanding what the possibilities are and what our own potential is. Thank you.